Good morning, Hope Kids. All right, so today we are starting a brand new 1-week series. That's it. We're just going to be in this series for 1 week, and it's called We Are Family. Now, in this series, we're going to talk all about two people named Abraham and Sarah, and how Abraham was the father of God's family. And in this series, we're going to get to talk about, just for this week, we're going to get to talk about our families and how God takes care of our families. So before we get into anything today, first, we got to watch our story video. And then after, we're going to get to look at some pictures of a family that you maybe don't know, but you'll know one person there. So let's go watch today's story video and then come on back and we will get into today's lesson.
The Faithful Hall of Fame, Sarah. This is Sarah. Sarah was Abraham's wife. One day, as Abraham sat near the entrance of his tent, God appeared to him. Abraham looked up and 3 men stood before him. God promised Abraham that he and Sarah would someday have a son. In fact, God promised Abraham that he would have many children. Even more than the stars in the sky. Now, Sarah was very old when God made this promise. When she heard that God promised to give her a child, she laughed. The messenger of God stopped Sarah. He asked, "Is anything too hard for the Lord?" Sarah chose to trust God, and she became pregnant and she gave birth to a son. The son's name was Isaac. God's promises came true for Abraham and Sarah. Abraham became the father of many nations, and from his child came children, and from their children, more children, until Abraham's descendants were truly more numerous than the stars in the sky. Abraham and Sarah trusted God for the promise and believed that God was faithful.
So what we just saw was a story about two people named Abraham and Sarah in the book of Genesis. We saw that they were really, really old. They didn't have any kids, and they didn't have any way to keep the family line going on. We saw that when God told Sarah that she was going to have a baby, she laughed at God because she didn't trust that God was going to take care of her future and her future family. So we see this picture of people doubting what God can do. We see that Abraham and Sarah didn't trust that God has what's best in mind for us and that God can be trusted with our family. So what I want to do is I want to show you a few pictures of some families. What you're about to see, and here they come up right now, are some pictures of my family. So here is a picture of me and just my wife, Cassie, which some of you may know from Sunday mornings. Here's some big family photos from our wedding day with my aunts and uncles and cousins and nephews and even Cassie's family. And you'll see that what it started off as, though, was just two people, and slowly but surely, God grew that family. And from generation to generation, I now have nieces and nephews, and one day I'll have kids of my own. And throughout all of those years and hundreds of years of my last name Beer family growing, we've seen God take care of our family. Now, it doesn't always look like we think it does. We haven't always had millions of dollars. We haven't always had every single thing that we always wanted. We haven't always looked perfect because we're not perfect, right? We are filled with sin and we are imperfect. But God has always taken care of our family. Times that were tough for our family, God provided just what we needed the moment that we needed it. Whether that was just His presence, or that was maybe some money, maybe it was some food, maybe it was even friendship. What we've come to realize, though, is that from generation to generation of my family, God has taken care of us, that we can trust God with our family. Miss Cassie and I, remember some of you guys know her as a small group leader here, but she is my wife. Miss Cassie and I trust God with our family, our marriage, and all of the future kids that we're going to have. I made that sound like we're going to have like 30. We probably won't have 30 kids, but we trust God with our family. Now, Abraham and Sarah, they didn't really trust God with their family at first because they were so old and they just didn't think it could happen. And they just didn't think that God could do it. They thought it was impossible. But what we learn from this story and what we're focusing on today is two things. The first is that God makes the impossible possible. God makes the impossible possible. God takes things that we think he could never do or could never happen, and he makes them happen. Now, he doesn't do things like staple water to a tree or makes $1,000,000 bills rain down from the skies or have unicorns prancing around our backyard when we pray for it. He doesn't necessarily do the impossible like that, although he probably, definitely could. What God does is he takes things in our life that we think will never happen because we don't deserve it, or we just think that we have too much bad luck. And God makes those impossible things in our mind possible through his power. And what we learn from that is God can be trusted with our family, and God can be trusted with our hearts. Maybe some of you guys watching today are going through different things. Maybe you guys are moving up a grade and you guys don't really know how that's going to affect you. Or maybe some of you guys are losing some siblings. Maybe they're going to high school and you were at the same school, but now they're moving on to a different school and you're going to be by yourself. Maybe your siblings are going to college. Some of your brothers and sisters are going to college. Maybe your parents are fighting a lot more recently. Maybe your parents are separating. Maybe your family is going through something and you're a little scared. Maybe you just moved places and now you're here at Hope, or you're here in Anderson, or maybe you're moving away from Anderson. Whatever your family is going through, no matter what's happening in your home right now, what we can do is we can trust God with our families. I want to read one passage and then we're done in Romans 8, verse 28. And what Romans 8, verse 28 says, we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him. I'll read it one more time. We know that in all things, not just some things, all things, God works for the good of those who love him. Things are going to happen in our lives and in our family's life that we just can't control, that we don't know is going to happen. But when all of those things start happening, when the world starts getting a little crazy, when school maybe shuts down, and when we go back to school and we don't know what to do, when all of those things start happening, we know from Abraham and Sarah that God makes the impossible possible. And because of that, we can trust him with our families. I want to leave you guys with this today. And I want you guys to practice doing this. That in situations where you get nervous, where you're scared, where you are confused, where you don't know what to do, I want you guys to pray, God, I know you are in control. Help me to trust you. God, I know you are in control, and I want to trust you, so help me trust you. That's why I want you guys to pray in any of those situations for this week and even the rest of your life. It's a good practice for us to pray those words so that God can help change our hearts to trust him more. We can trust God with our families and our lives because he makes the impossible possible. All right. See you guys next week. I love you guys and I miss you guys.